Hi everyone, thanks for attending this webinar. I know it's a Friday afternoon and you've all dedicated your beer time to this, so I'll make it quick. I'll do my best to add some value, and I really hope that you're able to put some of the action steps from this video or this webinar into action, and hopefully win a lot more tenders than ever before. So the premise of this webinar is secrets to winning tenders, even if you had never tendered before. And what I hope to show you is just give you some inside tips and secrets of what I look for in tender responses, and also what the tender evaluation panel is looking to see. So we'll get straight into it. So what I'll be covering in this session is I'll give you a bit of an overview of the opportunity in tendering, look at some of the different tendering strategies that are out there and how you can really look to optimize your tendering solution. I know a lot of you will be thinking that tendering is hours and hours of work, and it can be, but with some of these strategies, hopefully you'll be able to keep that down to a minimum. I'll go through some of the key criteria that you really need to look at and make sure you nail it down, because they're really the key selection criteria that you must get right. I'll also go through some of the common mistakes that I see quite often, and if you can avoid these, you'll also reduce some significant penalties. I'll share some tips that will help you win, and these are my big secrets, and a little bit of resources, and we can find some additional resources that will help you in your tendering success. Just a bit about me, so you know where I'm coming from. I own a project management company called Striking Project Management. Have an office in Brisbane and Shanghai. Basically, I sit on the client side, so that means that in that role, I'm helping the client to get the best value for money in their project. So that starts with early planning of their project, putting together the scope document, looking at how we're going to procure it, whether it be through a tender process or an RFQ, and then right through to delivery and handover. It's around that procurement process where I'm going to focus on tonight in this webinar, and obviously a key impact in that procurement process is the tender evaluation, and I'll speak a little bit more on this later, why this is so important. We work with small to medium-sized businesses and larger governments. A lot of our SME work is in helping them structure their project management systems and delivering project management services on their behalf. So with that client-side work, I have had a lot of experience in the tender evaluation, particularly both chairing the panel and designing the tender responses. And typically the project manager plays a fairly key role in the tender process. I've been involved in about $35 million worth of projects, both small, couple of $100,000 projects, right up to tens of millions of dollars worth of projects. Why am I sharing this information? Well, basically, there's a lot of tenders out there that just really don't hit the mark, and it doesn't do myself any favours on the client side, and it certainly doesn't do you guys any favours by not getting it right. Basically, all I want to see is the best company delivering the work for my client, and from what I see, most companies are good at what they do, they just don't demonstrate it in their tender response. The other side is maybe a little bit selfish, in that I hope that if you win a tender, you might call me to help you with your project management side and delivering that project or that tender. So bit two-sided coin there. If not, I know that my clients will get a better result, and hopefully I might get some business out of it. So the overview of the tender opportunity. Well, basically we look at there's huge opportunity in federal tenders, and by that we're looking at main government type tenders, so things like your AusTender, e-tender portals. So they're stuff that handle direct to government, and they can be Australia-wide tenders, fairly big, many multi-million-dollar projects. Right down, then we can go to local government tenders. So that's Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, through their own tendering portals. We have government agencies also, so the larger utilities, things like the NBN and various others. Right down to councils, local council websites, and larger companies are also quite offering tendering. You see this a lot in commercial cleaning, advertising, construction. They all tender out for these larger projects. Now, if we talk strategy in tendering, basically what we want to try and do is plan tenders in advance. I know most people get onto a tender quite late. They normally have 2 to 3 weeks to put in a tender response, and to be honest, that's not enough time. What you can do, especially for the larger tenders, is look at that 6-12 month horizon and plan in advance which tenders you're going to bid for, and prepare for those well in advance. So what you can actually start doing is pulling together recent relevant information, and even resource up for that tender process. A good tool for this is looking at the forward procurement plans. You'll see these on most of the government websites. If you look down go through the tendering portal and look for procurement policies, forward procurement plans. They call them different things, and they call them different terms in different websites. But if you look for something around procurement planning and forward procurement planning, you'll get a long-term view of what tenders are in the pipeline. And these will be broken down by category, such as it could be an IT project, and it might say in 24 months they'll be looking at rolling out a new SAP system, or that the current commercial cleaning contract is due to expire in 8 months, and that will be re-released, or there could be a new panel of providers being raised in 6 months. So this gives you a fairly good indication of the upcoming tenders. What you can then do is start to plan these ones out. So you don't want to bid for 4 tenders in the same month, because if you get them all, if you win them all, you'll be in a lot of trouble trying to resource up and deliver them. You're much better off picking 1, 2, 3 strategic tenders that you know you need to win or you must win, and really putting in a great response for those. Then you can do a couple others in between those, but you don't want to be in a position yourself where you can't deliver on the tenders you put forward. Once then you put together your tender responses, and I'll go through some of this tonight, but basically most of it will be standard documentation, and what you want to try and get to is a point where you have 70% of your tender documentation ready to go, and that's through having standard templates, standard response questions pre-prepared, and really have this tender portfolio ready to go. You want to target only relevant tender opportunities. So if you're a construction specialist, don't go looking at an IT project, for example. If you specialise in residential construction, don't put in a bid for commercial. You're not helping yourself. You need to only go with relevant tender opportunities. You're far better off to wait for the right ones and bid on the right ones than trying to put in a response where you don't have a relevant experience. Even though we're going to have, the aim here is to have 70% of the material pre-prepared, you still need to tailor it all for each tender. Some of the common mistakes that I see in tender responses is non-compliance. Basically, if the tendering authority wants you to submit 2 hard copies, 1 electronic, 1 in colour and 1 in black and white, you need to do that. Quite often I'll see a company that will just submit 1 tender or send it on a USB stick, even though it's been requested that it comes in hard copy. Straight away, if you get a lot of tenders and you're trying to evaluate 30 or 40 tenders, you're just going to cull out those non-conforming ones straight away. It's simple stuff, and a lot of it is commonly missed. So it's compliance to all the selection criteria is critical, and most of this stuff's hidden in plain sight. It'll tell you in the tender response requirements, submit it on this date, in this format, with this information. The next big mistake that I see is tenders failing to demonstrate their capability. So what we'll see is that they'll provide a response to the tender questions and responses, and they'll tell us that they can do it, but they won't prove that they can do it. So what you want to do in every tender, every time that you say you can do something, you need to demonstrate it, and you do that by showing relevant examples of how you did it in the past, how you would do it for this particular tender, what's different about the other tenders, or what's different about this tender, and how you will change your process to suit this one. The other one is failing to demonstrate the understanding of the scope of the work of the project. And this is a little bit different to capability. In capability, you're trying to demonstrate that you have the skills and experience to deliver the project. When you're trying to demonstrate the understanding of the scope, you need to prove that to the evaluation panel that you know so much about this type of project that you've factored everything in. You understand the project so well, the least risky tenderer of the evaluation. Non-conformance submissions is another big one. What a lot of people, when we say conforming and non-conforming, a conforming bid is if I ask for a brown table with a black leather insert, for example, but you know that you build white tables with blue leather inserts. A far superior product in your belief, you might send a tender in for that, a white table and a blue leather insert. That's what we call non-conforming bid. It doesn't conform to the requirements of the tender, because the tender may have asked for a black table or a brown table with a black leather insert. You need to submit a conforming bid. It has to, otherwise the tender evaluation committee cannot evaluate the tender, and it will get thrown out as a non-conforming. Another big mistake is there's no innovation in the tender response. So it's a great opportunity to show innovation, how your product or service is better than the competitors, and demonstrate that, because you will get points for innovation in your approach, innovation for your product, and you want to demonstrate that. Now, in order to demonstrate innovation, in most cases you need to submit a non-conforming bid. So it may be slightly different to what they asked for, but the result could be a lot better, or it should be a lot greater value to the client. So the important thing when you're submitting a non-conforming bid or a highly innovative approach you also need to submit a conforming bid. So there's two responses then. You submit the conforming bid as exactly how the client asked for it, and then you might back up and say, however, we believe we can offer superior value with this non-conforming bid, and that allows a tender evaluation panel to review your bid, the conforming bid, in line with all the others, and they can measure then apples against apples, and then evaluate the on the basis of innovation on your non-conforming bid. Key criteria. Again, you need to get all these right in order to win a tender. Number one, that we touched on earlier, compliance. And that is compliance with the response criteria and the submission criteria. So really read through the tender response documents. And what I strongly suggest to the clients I work with is that you read through the tender response documents 2 or 3 times, and then take out an Excel spreadsheet and start writing down all the requirements. Everything from due date, how they want the answers responded to, what format, what's the timing of the project, what's the everything to do with the tender. Just write it all down, and you'll come with a list of a couple of pages long of all these key selection criteria. Then in the next table over, just start writing down some of the support documents that you might be able to submit to demonstrate that. If you can do just that step, you will be so far ahead of most other tenderers, it won't be funny. The next key criteria is to show an understanding of the scope of works. I know in a lot of cases it sounds simple, but if I'm asking you to build me a building that's going to be 13 stories high and residential in nature, type out a page or half a page explaining some of the material you might use, some of the similar projects that you've used, and some of the issues that have occurred on similar projects and how you've managed those. So really show a depth and breadth of understanding of the scope of works. Repeat back to me what you believe the project is about. Approach and methodology. This is probably one of the hardest ones to get right. In most tender responses, you'll have key criteria that ask you to demonstrate your approach and methodology. So what that is we're trying to leave these are open questions deliberately, because we want you to prove to us that you understand how to go about delivering the project, and that you can think methodically in your approach. And the only way to do that is by not giving you closed questions. So basically, you need to come back and really create a word picture around how you propose to go about delivering this project, and how you're going to keep it on track. You can do this in a number of ways. You can create a series of word pictures. You can show a Gantt chart. You can show a process flow, a workflow diagram. You can show all three if that's required. You can show templates of how you've done similar projects of similar scope. But you need to walk through from start to finish how you'll go about doing the project, and how you'll go about maintaining its scope, its time and budget constraints. Risk management is quite often forgotten. It's a great area to grab extra points. It can be quite a simple process. List out a dozen to 2 dozen key critical risks that could occur in a project. If you've experienced in that scope of work, you'll be able to put this together quite quickly. You may even have it already recorded, and certainly all my clients do. what you want to do is again list out some of the key risks that could occur. It doesn't matter if they don't or if it's unlikely. If it's a key risk, put it down there. There's a good chance that the evaluation team or certainly the project manager is aware of those risks, and if you provide those same risks back, it's going to show a great level of understanding, and it also will support your understanding of the scope of work. Once you capture those risks, you then also need to document how you'll mitigate and manage those. This is just a simple Excel template. What's the risk? What's the how likely is it to occur? What the impact could be, and how you'll go about managing that risk. Value for money. This is the most government tendering bodies will tout that they're after a value for money approach. What that means is that governments don't. It gives governments and organisations a bit of flexibility in how they go about their selection criteria. So, value for money doesn't mean the cheapest tender bid. Okay, value for money does not mean the cheapest tender bid wins. It means the bid that shows the highest value for money. So what that is normally is a weighted selection criteria. Money, dollar value, normally it ranges depending on the project, but it's normally around 50% or more of a weight. The money normally has a 50% weighting, but this is again very dependent on the project, and don't use that as a gospel. It's only a guide. Some tender bids will actually request for tenders will actually show you the selection criteria weightings. But if you work on 50%, it's probably not a bad starting point. So you demonstrate value for money by really proving that you're the least risky tenderer, and by that I mean that you may not be the cheapest, but your response and your approach and methodology, your understanding of the scope, your risk management all gives you higher points and a certainty that you can deliver this project on time and on budget. And if you can prove that you offer the least risk to the evaluation committee, and if you're still within the ballpark of price, you'll certainly be shortlisted. If your price is way out, then you will be discounted, because it's either that it was seen that you didn't understand the scope, or you're pricing in too much risk. That's the same again for if your price is too low. You will quite often be discounted. I've seen some tender evaluations where they discount the highest and the lowest bid, if there's or any bid that's out of a 30% range. So depending on the project, depending on the evaluation committee, you need to be in the ballpark, but certainly you don't need to be the cheapest. And quite often there will be bonus points for innovation. So if you can come up with an innovation or an innovative solution, put it in there. It can only increase your score if the tendering body is looking for innovation in their response. If they're not, you're still going to get a better score, because it only shows that you know what you're doing. If you can prove that, you're going to be in a lot better response. So basically all these criteria come down to a scoring sheet. They all have different weightings, and it's the total of the scores is how they rank the tenders for value for money. How do we win? That's the key question. Well, basically, as I said a couple of times in this webinar so far, you win by demonstrating that you're the least risk. Your tender is the least risk to the client. You demonstrate a sound methodology. So throughout your entire tender response, you need to prove that you understand how you'll go about delivering the project, and if you can tie it into a project management framework or process, great. If you can tie it back to a best practice or a standard, great. You need to know, understand the methodology, and then prove how you'll do it and how you'll keep it on track. You demonstrate understanding of the risks. We talked about this again before. List out the risks. I know it may seem simple, but the fact that you've thought about those risks, you've planned for those risks, it all shows that you understand the scope. You understand the approach. You're providing the least risk approach to the market or to the tenderer. Understanding of scope. You need to tell me that you know what you're talking about. Tell me that you understand what I'm asking you to price. I need confidence that you know what you're pricing. You do that by showing similar projects that you've delivered. Show me here that you've done it on time. If you went over time, show me why, and show me how you've learnt from that experience. There's no, yes, you want to try and keep your tender responses positive, but if you don't have a positive, demonstrable piece of experience, even if it was slightly negative, but you showed to me that you've learnt from that, and these are the process changes you've put in place into your business so it doesn't happen again, it can only add value. If you haven't learnt from that experience and you haven't changed your process, obviously don't put it in. But if you don't demonstrate any of the key criteria area, you'll score poorly. And in a number of tenders, if there's insufficient information, you'll fall below the minimum acceptable criteria and you'll be out automatically. When I identify key personnel, this is another one where people tend to shy away from experience, is they'll put in one or two of their own personnel. But if they don't have internal personnel, they'll tend to shy away and leave this one out. Not having the internal personnel isn't necessarily a bad thing. Okay? It shows far more value if you identify you don't have one or two key personnel, but then you show me how you're going to get that key personnel, and maybe that could be through a subcontractor. It could be that you will hire additional staff. It doesn't really matter. What's more important is that you've identified that skills gap for this particular project, and you're mitigating my risk by finding a suitable candidate. What I think most tender respondents do is they go, oh, we don't have a Prince 2 project manager, certified project manager, so we'll just leave that out. And that doesn't do any favours. What they're better off doing is identifying that they don't have that gap and saying that we don't have a project manager with this capability. However, we will subcontract this component out to Striking Group, for example, who specialise in project management. That type of answer will get good marks. And then what you do is you go to your subcontractor and you say, right, send me your CV, show me how you will deliver on this project. And for example, a project manager or any other key personnel, get them involved in the tender process up front. You want to demonstrate that you can deliver. For me, as a client-side project manager, all I care about is I get it delivered on time, I get it delivered on budget, I get it delivered within the quality criteria that's required, and it meets the needs and the benefits of the business. If I can do that, then I've done my job. So I'm going to pick the company that is going to assist me to do that. So demonstrate that you can deliver. Demonstrate that you do that by demonstrating that you know through your sound approach and methodology, through your understanding of the risks, through your understanding of the scope, your key personnel, this is all this ties together into demonstrating that you can deliver, and this won't be a key criteria that you'll see. This is all the stuff that comes through when you combine and read the tender response in its entirety. You start to get a sense of who can deliver, how much certainty is there in this contractor that will deliver on time and on budget. And my last little tip is read between the lines. Okay, sometimes in especially in higher risk tenders or projects, I won't necessarily tell you what those risks are or what some of the potential issues could be, because I want to see if you know what they are. So quite often it can be a little bit sneaky, but read between the lines, try and understand what some of the key risks are for the client, for their business, and for the project, and just think about what are some of the things that they could be concerned in. If you're building a building, for example, and there's a new standard coming out in the next couple of months, you may want to identify that you've incorporated some of those, what you foresee those changes to be, or if you've been involved in that panel of discussion, or how you will change the plan to suit that new standard if it comes out and if it does impact. But certainly just try and think about some of the underlying issues that both the project manager and the client could be concerned about. Some final resources that you might want to look at. The AusTender website is great for some of the larger federal governments. Most council websites also offer some registration for tenders online. Also on these tendering portals, AusTender and the local governments, a lot of them have procurement planning policies that you can download. Many of them also have there's also paid searches, so things like Cordell, Tenders Online, TenderLink, e-tenders, tender bulletins. They're all basically they're a paid service, so you pay a monthly subscription or an annual subscription, and they email you out any relevant tenders that are in your category. It's all public information anyway. It's just, there's thousands of different points where tenders are released, and these guys aggregate them and send them out. If you don't want to spend the money, you can register at each state, federal, local, on all the respective websites. And another great resource, local governments. They usually have some great tender schedule and templates for free. And if you dig around, some of the governments, SA government, Brisbane City Council, Victorian government, they have some great tender tender templates, free download. Also, another thing to consider is that quite often tenders are open publicly, and that's a great, and you're welcome to go along and listen to those opened up. And what they'll actually do is open up each tender, they'll open up the envelope, and they'll read out the who the tender is and what their submission bid was. So if you're just starting out, you're more than welcome to go along and just listen to the tender bids that opened up and what their prices were. It's a great bit of market research. Sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit there. Also, local governments usually and state government and federal government will normally post the winning bid prices on the websites. So a couple of months later, you'll normally find that ABC company won the bid for $1.2 million, and that's good. Just a good bit of feedback. If you did a tender response, and if your bid was 1.5, then you probably know that you're a little bit out of the ballpark, and you can look at where you could have saved money or where you overpriced risk or anything else in the tender process. If there's any questions, just please send me an email directly. I can't seem to get the chat room working up tonight, so I'll post an opportunity where you can send through some questions directly. If you want to learn anything, go to the next step in this, and I am considering running an advanced workshop. It'll probably be a series over 6 to 8 weeks, and what we'll do is probably the same format, but I'll probably open up a chat room forum, just so we can continue the questions. But it'll be an hour to an hour and a half each week, online delivered like this, and I'll run through all those steps in detail and many more that I didn't get a chance to cover off tonight. I'll only do it if there's significant demand and it warrants it. So if you're interested, just sign up and just leave me your name and email address, and if I hit the numbers, I'll get in touch and we'll organise it. As I said, I will go deep into each key selection criteria, how you could answer it, some of the example demonstration criteria you may want to submit, and some key things to think about in that selection criteria. Key point is I'll show you how to demonstrate everything. I'll show you what you need to submit in your tender, what it needs to look like, how it needs to be formatted, and how you prove to be the least risky tender submission. And if you can get that right, you'll be in a very good position to win tenders. And like I say, once we've done this once, you're 70% there for all future tenders. So you just take that same information and put it in. You may tweak it for different projects, but in all intents and purposes, you'll have this portfolio of tender documents that you can just submit. It will be interactive weekly sessions, so you'll get out what you put in. Given that it's interactive weekly sessions, I will keep it restricted to, I'm not sure the numbers yet, maybe 10 or 20 people, but I'll keep it quite small so I can field questions directly on the night, and again, it will be through an online delivery. So if you're interested, just I'll put up a link, and just let me know via email if you want, or wait for the link to come up. But as I say, I may not do it. I'll only do it if I get enough numbers that warrants it. Look, I hope you've got some value out of tonight. Unfortunately, didn't have a lot of time to go really deep into some of the topics, but I really did share with you some of the most important factors, I think, and if you can get those right, you will be well and truly on your way to tender success. But like anything, I hope you put it into practice, and I hope you win from it. You can get in touch with me through Twitter @StrikingGroup, through my website strikingprojectmanagement.com, or email me directly, chris@strikinggroup.com.au. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.